Welcome to the Big Picture Manatee, everyone. We're excited here today to bring everybody back around. As you know, we've been doing episodes now over a year. It's about 14, 16 months we've been together. I love it. I love these great people. We're here to educate, inform, and support all of you in Manatee County with topics you need to learn about. And so I'm Sherry Courier. Had a past history with the county for about 30 years, county administrator the last few. Own my own private consulting business now, and I'm going to turn it over to Misty to introduce herself to some new viewers.
Hey everybody, I'm Misty Servia, also former county commissioner, have a long history with Manatee County as a resident, as an employee, as a commissioner, own my own business, and work for DeSoto County on some important work too. Happy to be here.
And hello, everyone. My name is Reggie Bellamy, former county commissioner of District 2, proud veteran, and I'm excited to say that the primaries are over and football season has started.
I love it. Big victory for my team yesterday. So let's get into it. And probably many others here. So today, everybody, we're going to talk about the county budget. We're going to break this down over a series of episodes, but for particular reasons, because this is pretty important to you. This year's projected budget for the Manatee County is over $2.42 billion. That's a lot of money. And that is a little bit of a difference in what we presented to you back in June in the preliminaries. It's about $42 million in an increase. And that's because now the millage rate has been set. And so we want to talk to you about what's included in that, what's funded in that, and the county administrator's responsible role for all this is to present commissioners with a balanced budget. And so the county administrator brings forth all of this information. That process has been going along now throughout the summer, since end of May, early June. And what's going to happen is it'll end up being in some final hearing adoptions, the last one being September 17th. So we wanted our community to know what to expect, and we also wanted to encourage you to be involved. So we know that the taxable value is about 13.45% countywide above what your current one or last year's is. And then also you've got an unincorporated increase of about 14.34%, which means a little bit of growth, everybody. So that means there's a little bit more money, but there's also a lot of expenses. And then the Palmer MSTU is up about 8%. So with that, those numbers, Misty, what does some of that mean, and what are some of the challenges for everyone to know?
You know, when you have a budget this large, there are going to be a lot of challenges. You know, you've got to think about employee recruitment, employee retention, compensation to be competitive, inflation costs and interest costs. And, you know, we've heard that the feds are probably going to adjust the interest rates this month. Affordable housing, another option, labor shortages all across the sectors. Those things impact completing projects on time. And of course, the high demand for services with all those new people who have moved here and all the people we continue to serve. So one good thing is that the county continues to have a strong bond rating with Moody's and Fitch at AAA. And that's a really good thing, you know, because the county, the debt service right now, the payments stand currently at $35.2 million. It's a lot of money, and that's excluding the environmental lands debt. So a new debt service plan was presented, and the board currently has been pushing the limit on borrowing to the point that at the speed at which projects get completed heavily impacts the ability to pay back that debt every year. And that's the balance, and it's been a tough one for them.
Yeah, so another year, a lot of growth, a bit larger than when I was a commissioner, which used to average about 8% each year. If we'd only had that kind of money, we'd have been able to reduce the amount of time to get projects done. For the county 14 departments, we are seeing that 21 new positions are being proposed. And I'm reading this because this is a lot of information that we want to make sure is clear and is out there. Back to the 21 new positions, 1 in the community and veteran services, 2 in convention and visitor bureau, 2 in the property management, 9 in public safety. That's always important for us. 3 in public works, 1 in sports and leisure. You know, I'm the type of guy who would always want a little bit more into that. And 3 in the 3 in the utilities. This presents about $12.8 million increase to the workforce for salary increases. Phase 1 of cost of living adjustments and phase longevity. We didn't see any further explanation about how this will be broken down, which is very, very, very unfortunate. We need to look at that. Also, a proposed 1% increase to both employer and employee health insurance premiums is being recommended. Sherry, how does that compare with the type of growth in our community that we are experiencing? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, so my thoughts are, as you all are, and everybody watch that growth pattern, continue dramatically. It's like setting important standards for people in the community. And I really appreciate you going through those positions and some of those internal costs, because those are important. And as Missy, as you said too, about how retaining employees is important, but also I think the community wants to see us do a real hard look at the county administration and the budget and what's going on and how many positions are created. So that growth matters. We're well above 10,000 new residents each year, which is very high. And all of the infrastructure has to support that. So we really will see what happens. The first public hearing that's required, because there's 2 that's required every year for the budget. The first one happens on September 12th. That's when everyone kind of knows what the formal change is going to be. And then that final hearing is September 17th. That's when the budget is set and finalized and approved. And the county budget, actually new budget year starts on October 1st or right around that time. There's always talk, and I know you guys had to consider this too, about reducing the millage rate and how that's presented to the board. And there were some options placed in the previous discussions about reducing the millage, like 0.05 mils to 0.20 mils, all of that might have resulted in a little bit of a lower cost to the residents. It could have been anywhere from about $17, $18 up to about $70 a year. However, it looks like right now things are holding firm. And I think since this new budget projection and the new capital improvement plan projection came in, it looks like the board is probably staying with the current millage rate. But that's why it's important to watch or participate in the budget hearings, because you can't go up in your millage rate because that was set in July as required by statute, but you could go down. And so I don't know about how the current costs are going to do. And so, Reggie, I don't know how, those impacts involve some of the other things that are happening federally.
Yeah, it's a lot going on there, and there's some things that could still impact the budget. Federal rate cuts may not happen until September. We never know when that's going to take place. The labor market is holding its own, as Florida's unemployment rate is 3.1% opposed to the national rate of 5%. However, inflation continues to rise and impact the cost of goods and services. We feel that every day. Municipal bonds are yielding lower rates than anticipated. This also presents an inverted curve, meaning the county currently benefits, but the unfavorable impact to the future bonding is not good. And then, of course, the elephant in the room. November 5th, baby. The
Right.
outcome either way will impact the supply and demand rates. Misty?
And remember, Reggie, when we were on the commission, we always got criticized for the reserves and the contingencies in the budget. And what we learned as commissioners is they can't exceed 10% of the total appropriation. And the reserves that's the reserves for the cash balance, but it couldn't be more than 20% of the appropriation. It can be used to pay for expenses until the new tax revenues are collected and things that we just couldn't account for. But having those two accounts, I learned was really, really important. And now working in DeSoto, I see that they have the same system. So yeah, that criticism was unfounded, I guess is what I want to say. And so the reserves for contingency now is at $57.3 million, and that's used for things like transportation, parks, recreation, the Civic Center project. You have reserve for salaries today at $18.8 million. The cash balance reserves is $646 million. And for capital, our reserves are at $119 million. Now that's a total of $841.3 million in our reserves. Sounds like a lot of money, but you can see why it's important.
Yeah, but the reality here is the timeline as far as what we're looking at. And the board has first required budget public hearing September the 12th. And that's right around the corner at 6 p.m. And the second required budget public hearing and the budget adoption meeting is September the 17th. So realistically, we have right about three weeks. Both are in the chambers at the board as far as 100. The boardroom as far as 1112 Manatee Avenue West. We'd encourage people to show up and speak. There's not normally a lot of people that attend these hearings, but it is really important to show you are watching and are aware of what's taking place.
Yeah, we always wanted to see, like who was going to show up. And so I think it's kind of a good thing that more people are engaged. I know recently we did a lot of discussion about how the people in Manatee County have become so back involved in what's happening in their local government. And so hopefully there will be more folks that are watching these things. It's a very, process that's very much difficult that goes through. The financial management department does a great job of really going through the numbers. And of course, there's so many people involved in all that. And so while we presented a lot of numbers to you today, we wanted to set this up for you so that you can start to understand and be informed about how the budget process is handled and how the tax dollars that are provided through all of the citizens here are utilized. And so over the next several months, we're going to break down what the budget that's adopted is. We're going to make sure that you hear more about the capital improvement plan, which in it itself had some changes here recently where the board had to pull some projects out of the capital improvement plan because of projected financial resources over the next 5 years and a loss or more expensive, some of them. So there's been some pretty significant changes in that. And we're going to come back in a future episode and talk to you more about how to look at a capital improvement plan, because it's a huge document, but it's important, just like the budget is, and how you can really understand what it means to be in the capital improvement plan and have your project already underway, and what it means to be a project of record, where you're not necessarily currently in the plan, but your information is there and on hold. And then now what it might mean to be listed as a project in future years. But citizens need to know that, because I know Misty and Reggie as commissioners, and when I was the administrator, would always come to me on a regular basis and ask me questions about projects that were in their district. They have people asking why something taking so long or why something isn't in the plan. And so part of what the Big Picture Manatee is here to do is to help you, the citizens, understand where you can go find that information and follow projects along as well, and make sure that your voice is heard. So thank you so much again. We'll be back in the future with more details, but for now, that's your Big Picture Manatee budget update. And we want to say thanks for tuning in. We also want you to know, we're on YouTube. We also have our channel there. We also have our bigpicturemanatee.com website, and we're on a lot of different podcasts now. So please make sure that, hey, maybe while you're watching one of those football games that Reggie was talking about, and there's a lull in the action, or you're doing your exercises or walking, or you're up early or you're up late, that you take a chance and listen to the show and then send us any ideas that you might have. So thanks for tuning in.
It's your money, so stay involved.
That's right. All right. Thanks, everyone.